Hello guys, welcome to a new video, and in this new video we are going to go over SNMP um, and some of the flavors that SNMP has, and then at the end we are going to go ahead and configure SNMP v3. Um, it took me a while for me to do this video because I could not get a Windows machine to work in GNS3 for me to install Power SNMP, but then I was able to just do it through ITProTV, which is what we are going to use today. So, what is SNMP? Well, SNMP stands for Simple Network Management Protocol, and we are going to configure it in a little bit using an ACL, which is what the exam recommends for us to be able to do. And well, SNMP version 1 was one of the first ones, or was the first one, the first simple network management protocol that came out, and it was just an open standard protocol, and it used traps and it did not reply to um, any information that it was receiving. It was only um, receiving um, the logs and all that, but it was not replying to anything. And it had a lot of limitations to it. And it also could not retrieve batches of information, so we had to do it one by one. I'm connecting to the routers or whatever it had to connect to all the time, which could cause to slow down your network. So it was really, really bad. And then they decided to come out with SNMP version 2 and 2C, which is the one that a lot of people uses. I actually found out that with a Windows server, any other Windows server does not let you configure SNMP v3. They only have SNMP version 2 and 2C, which is one of the other reasons that I had to go with ITProTV Labs for me to configure this lab that I'm going to do next. But the SNMP v2, what it did was it was able now to receive and respond to the data that it was coming in, and it also added a community string, which is really really nice. But it did not have any security in it, which is why they came out with SNMP v3, and which is why this is the only one that we need to be able to configure because it is the only one that provides security, and this is for the CCNA Security exam. Okay, so the version 3 enhanced security authentication, and, and this ensures that the traps are read by the intended party only, which means it provided confidentiality. It uses an EngineID to identify each SNMP entity. Um, the engine the EngineID used to generate a key for authenticated messages, and the privacy that it provided was that it encrypts SNMP data, and if you encrypt it um, or you hash it, you can provide data integrity, which is really nice. And the SNMP came out with three security levels: no authentication and no privacy, which of course that's no authentication password. It's exchange. The communication is also not encrypted, so it's just like SNMP version 2 or version 1 that we actually doing it. And then we have one which is authentication and no privacy. It provides you with a password authentication based on hashed but no encryption. And then we have one that is authentication and privacy, which is the one that we're going to implement today. And this provides authentication used to y- authentication is used and encryption is also used. And this requires the router to have the crypto set features on the image. So the router that we're going to use does have it. So go ahead and follow me to ITProTV Labs, and we're only going to use this Windows computer right here, which is PC Lab or PLab CS um, 01. And I installed this Power SNMP, which is the one that we're going to use to um, to get that SNMP information. And the IP address over here is one IP config. The IP address for this computer is 192.168.16.10, and I configured this NYH2. And what I did was just to show IP interface brief, I configured this gigabit interface that is connected to the, it's actually connected to um, NY Core 2 and NY, I think it's N Core 2 and then NY Access 1, um, which are two switches that are working right now, and then it is connected to the labs. So let's see if we have connectivity to the computer first before we do anything. There we go. There we go. So we have connectivity with this computer. So that's good. So now let's go ahead and configure SNMP v3 on NY-Edge 2. Let's go ahead and config T. And then for here, the first thing that we need to do, since we need to implement, if we go to the exam topics, because I follow it, this is how I actually pass my CCNA, because I follow it. I follow the exam topics one by one, and I learn every single one in it, everything in it. So what it's asking us to do is we need to configure and verify secure access through SNMP v3 using ACL. So we need to use an ACL. So the first thing that we need to do, we're going to create an access list, and it's going to be access list 98, and we have to permit host 192.168.16.10, which is the um, computer, which is the computer or the server that we're going to be actually running, because it is kind of like a server that we're going to be running over here. And then we need to do an access list 98 deny any log, because I don't want anybody else to send me any logs to this router. I don't want them to have access, only this computer right here. Okay, then after that, we need to do SNMP server. And the first thing that we need to configure is a view. And the view, we're going to call it all and ISO included. So that means that we are going to give everything to the server. And then after that, we need to do SNMP server. And now what we need to configure is we're going to configure a group, and the group that we're going to call it, we're going to call this group, let's say monitor. And now if we do a question mark, it's going to ask you which one do you want to configure, V1, V2C, or V3. You want to configure V3, version 2, SNMP version 3. And then it's going to ask you like, what do you want to do now? I want to do a privacy. And then after that, you can do a question mark. And what do you want to assign to? Do you want a read, write, notify, match, context, or access? We want to do an access list, 98, enter. And then after that, we need to configure the username, which is going to be a really long command. And then we want to create a username. And the username is going to be myself, not Iskar, Oscar. And then we want to assign a group. And the group that we are going to assign is this one right here, because it has assigned access list 98. So let's go ahead and put in monitor. And this is case sensitive. So if we put it in lowercase, make sure that you do lowercase and uppercase. And then the version that you want to do is version 3. What do you want to do right now? I want to do authentication. And we are going to use SHA. And then it's going to ask you for the authentication password for the user. And we're going to call this CCNA Security. And then it's going to ask you for what you want to do, an access list, or you want to do privacy. I want to do privacy as well. So let's do privacy, and we're going to use AES for this privacy. And which one you want to do? I want to do the highest one, which is 256. And then it's going to ask you for the privacy password. And we're also going to call it CCNA Security. And then at the end, we're just going to assign an access list 98, which is the one that we configure. There we go. So we have configured the SNMP v3 username. So now what we need to do is we need to go to this um, to the Windows device, and we want to configure this Power SNMP free manager, and we want to add a agent. So let's go ahead and add it. And what is the IP address that we need to add over here? 192 168.16.1, which is the router, and we're going to use version 3. Uh, which one is the name of it? The name is the username. Authentication password, we did CCNA Security, and then CCNA Security, and we use SHA, and over here we use AES 256. And what this is going to do now is going to start getting information from that router as soon as I click OK. Here we go. And as you can see, we have a description of the router. I did not provide this SNMP manager with anything, just my username and password. But as you can see, it already has the description of the router. Click OK, and you can see that we have an SNMP agent. So, and it is by username Asker. So if we do a right click and query, you can see that description is a Cisco iOS software, a C2900 software, and the version is 15.2, release software FFC2. So you get a lot of information over here. So if you go to, um, you can get a lot of stuff over here. You can see that the interfaces. So let's go ahead to the interfaces, and it will tell you the number of interfaces that I have. Let's see a query. I have 8 interfaces configured on that router, or that router has 8 interfaces. Let's verify that. See if that's true. Show IP interface brief. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I only see 7. I don't know why it says 8, but it is telling me that I have 8 interfaces. Interesting. So you can see the uptime of this system. So if we go over here and query that, the uptime is this. I don't know if it is by seconds. I believe it is by second because the number is really high. Let's see. Does it provide me with any IP forwarding? So it does gives you a lot of information on the router. As you can tell, system object. Let's query that. And that's the system object ID, the name of it, which is router. But if we go ahead and go to H2 and we do config T, host name, let's give it a host name of R1, and let's go ahead to the computer now, and let's see if the system name changes. There we go. It changed to R1. Before it was router, and now it's R1. Okay. It can, if we added a location, we don't have any location for that router. Um, can we add a location? Let me see how to add a router location. Cisco. I've never done that before. I don't think you're able to do that for that. But if you're able to do that, if you know how to do it, please let me know on leave me a comment on the description below of this video, so I can then do it later because I'm gonna keep doing. I'm gonna do this live at least 10 times until I know it by hand. Uh, until I know it by memory. So this is how you configure SNMP v3 using ITProTV Labs. And the lab that I used was the first lab, and then I just configure an IP address on NYH2, and I turn it on. I turn NY Core 2 on, and also NY Access 1 on. So this is it for this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.